Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Leader in You podcast brought to you by EMC Leaders. We're so excited to be here. My name is Polina, and I co host this amazing podcast with the wonderful Dr. Lola Gershfeld. Welcome, Dr. Lola.
Hi, Polina. It is so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us. And we're so happy to be here with you.
Yay! So,
Yay.
we have a really great topic for you today, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So, lately in these podcasts, I've been coming up with all these wonderful ideas on things that we can discuss, and I kind of don't even give my mom any notes or tips on what we're going to be talking about, which I love because Dr. Lola, you do such an amazing job sharing your experience and how transformational this process is for you and the workplace. So, you wrote a fantastic email yesterday. And in the email, you talked about what happens when there's silence amongst relationships at work and when there's silence amongst team members and in the workplace. And I thought this was such a great topic because sometimes people say, like, silence is a language. It's literally a language people use to inform other people that they're upset. Or it could just be like a skill that people think you should learn in order to know when to be silent in conversations and when not to be silent. And so I thought it was really interesting what you wrote in the email and also how you explained the ways that people can identify, what is that silence actually saying? So give us a little bit about, like, really understanding on the science perspective, what happens when someone goes silent?
Well, first of all, I want to say that you are so right. I've been taught myself when I was as a young professional, that if somebody is silent, just leave them alone. They'll come around, and you just have to wait it out. That's one of the things which is wrong. The second thing I was taught is that if somebody is not responding, or if somebody is kind of like behaving or asking bad questions, you just give them the silent treatment. You just start
Yeah.
ignoring them, and this is what I was taught, that they will stop behaving this way if you just ignore it. And that
Mm.
is a wrong suggestion and advice. So through my years of working as an HR manager or CFO or board member, I remember the meetings that we had where one person or two people would go completely silent. And then no matter what you're trying to do and how you're trying to engage them, it's not really working. And I also remember working with the CEO who had about 10 people on her team. And she would say, we don't have any conflicts, except these two people come to our management meetings and they don't say anything. And at first, I didn't pay attention to it, but then I wondered, like, why are they not engaging? And I think they're just not engaging because they don't want to engage. And so she did not really pay attention that there was underlying conflict that was happening. Because when I did an interview with each one of these leaders, guess what? They all told me about many disconnections that they have been kind of like processing underneath it for a year. And so people get into the silence because they get stuck. They get overwhelmed. They don't know how to deal with their emotions. So that is the first sign that there's a disconnection in the relationship.
That's amazing. Okay, keep going. You have several signs, I think, right?
Right. Yeah. So the first thing is to recognize when there's a silence or somebody is disengaging, there's a breakup, there's a rupture, there's a disconnection, something that they experienced either hurt or feeling not valued or feeling somehow dismissed. That's number one. The second thing is you also have to recognize what's going on with you when you experience the silence. The biggest problem for us is to feel rejected. The biggest fear for us in the relationship with people we depend on is when we get that sense of rejection. And when we get that sense of rejection, we start to respond to that rejection with all different ways. Right? Number one, I was talking in my email, I talked about 3 different patterns that we get into, 3 different cycles. The first cycle, and I love this because this cycle is called find the bad guy. It's like pursue cycle. It's attack cycle. Each person is trying to maybe find who is at fault here. So that's number one cycle. But that does not include the silence treatment because people are actually arguing. The second cycle is called pursue withdraw cycle, where one person is trying to get the response from the other, maybe sending emails, email after email after email. I mean, I remember working with this particular team. The CFO was sending emails to the vice president of sales and marketing, and he was hurt. He was disconnected. He didn't know how to talk about it, where he got hurt, and he was just silent. And she was going crazy because she is very much into communication, and she wants to get a response, and she was getting very, very anxious that she was not getting a response from that vice president of sales. So as you can imagine, every time she would send him an email, it would become more aggressive, it would be more louder, it would get like more desperate. And so he got more offended by that type of those type of emails. And what did he do? He became more silent, more shut down. And then when he came back to the office and they had they had kind of like an interaction, he would get what we call hit and run. He would get really upset. He would make a really bad comment that really like puts her on the spot, like a demeaning comment, some sarcastic comment, and then he would shut down again. So this is what happens in those patterns. And the third pattern is withdraw. And what happens in the withdraw? Both people kind of already exhausted, so they just avoid each other. I remember being at this conference, and the person from Chase Manhattan Bank, she was the big executive there, and she said that she couldn't get along with one of her colleagues. And every time she saw him in a hallway, she would run away and go the other way. And she said it was so horrible because it created a lot of distress in the team, in the department, and until one day they finally got together and resolved the issue. But it's very, very painful for us not to have the communication.
So we've talked about the different ways that we show up in a conflict. So we have the pursue, withdraw, and withdraw cycles. And we talked about that many times. So I find it really good to repeat this information so that you can really understand how you show up in the conflicts that you have. We show up differently in every conflict. So we could show up maybe as a withdrawer to our boss, as a pursuer to our team members, or our subordinates that work with us. We can show up differently in the conflict if we were hurt compared to if we feel like we hurt someone else. So this important to identify the cycle and where you are in that cycle, which position you take in that cycle, because that will also bring awareness to what are those automatic thoughts and behaviors that you do to protect yourself in that cycle. And one of the things that you said in the email that I thought was so great was, in a team, going quiet isn't peace, it's protest. Protest that a once emotionally connected team has been isolated and severed. So many people think being quiet is keeping the peace. And if you look at a scale, right, you have like one side of the scale is someone who's like extremely aggressive, loud, confrontational, yelling, one wants to talk about the issue right away. On the other scale, you have someone who's completely shut down and quiet, right? So both are not bad or good. They're just both ineffective when dealing with conflicts. And typically people will slide from one extreme to the other extreme on the scale. And oftentimes we think like, oh, being shut down and quiet is actually the better option. Well, you would think that, but you're actually causing, it's causing pain for both on both ends of the scale, whether you are completely shut down and silent or you become aggressive. Both sides of the scale are painful and you will suffer on both sides of the scale. Yeah, of course, the other person in the conflict suffers as well. But what the EMC process does is we are able to bring you to the center of the scale. So we don't want to be shut down and closed off. And we don't also want to be like aggressive, confrontational. We want to be balanced. We want to be in the center of the scale. You can still feel hurt. You can still feel the painful emotions. And at the same time, you can stay in the center of the scale to express yourself effectively. And this is why I think, what you wrote in the email was so powerful, because like, people often think that silence is the better option. People think is being silent works, or just stay quiet and, you won't get into trouble. In fact, I worked for a company for about 4 months years ago, Panera Bread, and we had a conflict there. And I remember my manager is like one of the only corporate jobs I've ever had. There's only been 2 in my life, and that was one of them. And one of the managers, and I was having an issue, and one of the managers said, like, just stay quiet. Like, that's literally all you have to do. Just stay quiet, and this is going to be a very easy job. I was in a general management position, regional manager position, and she just kept saying, like, just stay quiet. And that's all that you have to do. I ended up not being able to do that, and I got fired. But the point is,
you got into a cycle with the manager right at the start.
Well,
right?
I just filed a complaint like through their website instead. Instead of talking to the manager about the issue.
Oh,
and so they fired me over it. So, it's really interesting that we have that. It's really the protest. The silence is the protest. And I can relate to it so much, because I feel, as a recovered withdrawer, and in moments I withdraw right away, typically, I can recognize and kind of come back to the center of that scale. I find it's very true, even as a child. And you know this too well, because you were there during my childhood. It was like, and it's not just my childhood. It's like, I see so many parents, if the baby's crying on the plane, it's shh, stop crying, If the child is upset, like, stop showing that upset feelings. You know what I mean? I saw it in conflicts with the kids just the other day when we were at Disneyland. It's like a lot of parents just don't know how to handle it. It's the same in the workplace. A lot of people do not know how to handle those big emotions that come. So
exactly.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It's interesting that the protest is the key here, to recognize that the silence is the protest to that disconnection that can occur and continue to occur in the relationship. And as much as the pursuer who is being aggressive is a protest to the disconnection that is happening in the relationship. So that is so key. I love that you use that phrase, because we have to recognize when people do become quiet and funny, the people who make a lot of noise are always looked as the troublemakers. Oh my gosh, they are creating the chaos. If only they will leave the team, everything is going to become better. Well, I think we talked about it at one of our podcasts, is that I worked with a company where they got rid of that person who was creating a lot of trouble, and another person took that spot. Because when you have a manager or a team member who is silenced or uses that strategy of shutting down and not responding, they will automatically increase the anxiety to the other person, even not looking at them. I mean, I remember this particular case where the CEO was the withdrawer, and he would not look at the engineering manager who was presenting. And every time he would not look at the engineer manager would get so upset, he would curse in meetings at people, and he would berate them. And every time he would berate them, the CEO would ignore him more. So this created a lot of distress. So this is extremely, extremely important to understand that part.
So that brings me to talking about what we can do to help make someone who is experiencing silence in the workplace more comfortable to kind of bring them back from that silence. So I just want to pull up the email one more time, because you did mention a few things that people can look for in their team. And so you mentioned people who are usually social that have gone quiet. So if you met them when they first came onto the team, or they first onboarded, or they first maybe met you, and you see their outgoing personality, and all of a sudden they're not that way anymore. I say, like, if they start to act weird, they do weird things out of the normal behaviors that they usually have. The person who used to push back now just nods along. So if someone was sharing their challenges, or like, their opinions or their experiences at the work, now they're just like agreeing with everything. The one who was proactive about pointing out problems, stop bringing anything to you. Okay, so that just kind of goes along with someone who's not pushing back anymore. So if you are noticing those things, this is really great sign that someone in the team is gone silent. Okay, so let's talk about what we can do to bring that person back from the dead.
From the dead. In the EMC process, like you said, that we are bringing people back to balance. Right? We are re-engaging the withdrawer. We're making it safe for them to re-engage. And we're also softening the pursuer, because the pursuers are so anxious and upset. We need to also recognize what's going on for them. So both people are struggling for connection. And what we are doing.
I understand. But I think that what we need to focus on in this situation, because a lot of times in the reconnection form, we focused on the withdrawer first, right? So like if you are dealing with let's say you're a manager and you have two people on your team, that one is a withdrawer, one is a pursuer, or you notice just like one person has shut down and has gone silent. Okay. We're going to teach you some things that you can do right now at this moment to bring them back out of that feeling like they have to be silent. Yes, ideally, we want to bring two people together, but maybe they don't even feel comfortable telling you what is going on. Like, what's the conflict? Who is it with? When someone's gone silent, they're just like, they're shut down. They don't want to even talk about it. So we want to kind of bring them out of that hole, out of that kind of like alone place that they're feeling, and re-engage them. That way, we could then eventually, when we can also rebalance the pursuer, or maybe rebalance the other withdrawer that's in the conflict, we can bring them together. So I think the very first step, and why don't you can take that over. I will just talk.
No, I like how you go ahead. You're doing great.
The very first step is to share and shed light on what you see or experiencing. So what do I mean by that? So being able to recognize how it impacts you that the other person is silent. And I think that's important, because then we can share with them like, hey, I know, just being curious. You get into like the feeling of being curious. Like, hey, I noticed that, kind of gone silent, or some things I've noticed, like you're maybe doing different things, behaviors than usual. I would love to understand what's going on. And if they're like, no, that's fine, nothing's wrong, blah, blah, blah. Okay, do it again. We do it again. Hey, I just noticed, like in this instance, usually you would be like really happy, just not feeling. And so the first step I say is like, be curious, ask questions. Okay. The second step is to share how it impacts you. Okay. And I like that because what happens is when the other person, in a way, that's why we use the EMC form. So we can share, we use those I statements, like I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling like a bit disconnected, that I'm seeing that you're shut down, and it's kind of scaring me, because I want to work together as a team and I want to be there for you when you're feeling conflicted, but I don't necessarily know how if I don't know what's going on.
Yes. And because you are important to me.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I care about you, right?
So
So
I
we
think
want
number
we want to give them that attachment language to reassure them it impacts me because I care about you, because you're important to me, because your experience matters to me.
Yes. So I think the first step is that being curious, asking questions. And the second step is sharing with validating phrases how it's impacting you. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So, as simple and duplicatable as this process and form is, it's very important to understand that we cannot force someone to, open up all of a sudden. Sometimes it takes a little time and repeated phrases for someone to feel comfortable to share what's going on with them.
Yes, and I love that because oftentimes we give up very quickly. Well, it's
Yeah.
nothing wrong, fine, right? I've done my job to ask you and to be curious. If you don't want to share, that's fine too. Well, they don't want to share because they still don't feel safe. So by
Yes.
repeating and by kind of like pursuing, but in a very soft and and supported way, we're giving them a message saying, "Look, you are important to me. I care about, I want to create the safety for you to share." And people will start sharing because they want to be connected as well. There's a need, there's a longing for connection. We are wired for connection. So even though they are protecting, they will eventually share. I mean, a good example, I was working with one particular team, and this production manager would come and he says that, Lola, I'm not going to share. And I said, that makes sense. I know. He said, because in my previous company, when I shared, uh, that information was like used against me. And then I say, I know how painful that is for you. But he would still come back to the session. And slowly he would want to share more and more because he really wanted to be more connected with his team. So it was very difficult, was scary for him. It was risky for him. And people will take risk once they know that there's a way to do it in a safe and professional way.
I think you said something really great with that is that people don't know how to respond using the language of emotions.
Yeah.
EMC should be its own language. Do you speak EMC? Do you do you speak EMC? Okay, you're hired. Okay.
Yes.
um,
Actually, somebody asked me the other day, how do I interview people for EMC language?
yeah, I say the same thing about like personal relationships.
Yeah.
Before I go on a date, well, do you speak the language of the EMC process? you
Okay.
know. So yeah, it's very true. We need to know how to respond, and I think those three steps. The third step is responding by saying thank you for sharing. So remember that we're not looking for solutions when we're trying to pull someone out of their silence. What we want to do is to create a safe enough experience and environment for them to share what's going on. So step one, be curious. Step two is use the validating phrases to make them feel safe again. And step three, when they do feel safe enough to share, all you're going to say is thank you very much for sharing. That makes
Yes.
sense. That must be difficult for you. And that's really the focus, because we say that enough times, they will feel safe enough to do a form. Then that transitions to doing an actual full reconnection.
Yes. Oh, I love it because thank you for sharing. It's such a beautiful way to recognizing their strength, their courage, and also gives them the sense that you care about their experience. So thank you for sharing. Every single time they share, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing is the
Yeah.
key and validating statement. Amazing. Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, that wraps up our podcast for today. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. Also, for
Thank
people
you
who
for
listen
listening.
and want to learn about the EMC process, we are so excited to share this amazing process with you because it is truly our goal in life is to have strong related relationship in our work, and we want to feel happy and connected at work, right? Because that only fuels our motivation, resilience, and innovation at work. So I feel like when people start to use the EMC language and integrate it into the work, well, hallelujah, they become really, really happy, right? And excited to work.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram at EMC Leaders or Dr. Lola EMC, or no, it's Dr. Lola Gershfeld now. And you can follow us on TikTok, YouTube. No, it's not. It's not yet.
No, I mean on Instagram, yes, Dr. Lola Gershfeld. That's right.
Okay. I thought I had that right. Yes,
Yeah,
Dr.
you
Lola
did.
Gershfeld. Okay, and you can follow us on social media. We're making great content now, so you can drill all these things into your mind and learn the language that will change your life. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Polina, and I co-host the Leader in You podcast with the amazing Dr. Lola Gershfeld, brought to you by EMC Leaders. Check our website out at emcleaders.com for more information on how you can get trained to create a thriving workplace environment for your business, your team, and so that you can actually be happy when you wake up and go to work. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.